just finished recording this video. Just finished. And look who came to say hello. You want to show off? If you're unaware, this is my cat. Her name is Yuffie. And she is fickle. She has left me. Hello, everybody. As you might have noticed, I have started to get more active in terms of making YouTube content, and something that I sort of immediately thought of that I would really enjoy doing and talking about and thinking about is really anything related to Final Fantasy, if we're being honest, because anyone who knows anything about me, frankly, knows that I really, 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 really like Final Fantasy. So when I was brainstorming some video ideas, what came to mind is a classic thing for Final Fantasy content creators to do on a variety of occasions is ranking their personal favorite Final Fantasy games. So that is the overall goal for the video that I have for you guys here today. So for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Christina. I am primarily a variety streamer over on Twitch, but I do want to branch out a bit more into making more of this YouTube content. So a little bit of background before I get right into the tier makery ranking stuff. I've been playing Final Fantasy games and or involved in participating in Final Fantasy games since I was really, really young. Maybe like the year Final Fantasy X came out might have been the start of it. So essentially at first I really started out by watching my two older sisters playing Final Fantasy games. Eventually I started getting a little bit more involved as a little fun tidbit of information when I would play Final Fantasy IX with one of my sisters. We would both like cast ourselves in the different roles, and she would have like half of the characters and I would have the other half, and we would like read the lines like we were voice acting essentially, and it was so much fun. I would be in charge of like looking in the walkthrough for any of the things that were difficult or confusing or really hard to find when we were trying to do like the completionist kind of stuff. And then eventually I did start playing the games myself. But the first Final Fantasy game that I played that I hadn't experienced with one of my siblings first was Final Fantasy VII. But I had played, I'm pretty sure, 9 and 10 before I ever played 7. So that's just a little bit of background. Ever since then, for my whole life, I've continued to play and follow and talk about and think about Final Fantasy games, and they've become a very deeply woven part of my identity, and I love them very much. So I'm really excited to talk about my overall rankings. So let's get into the tier maker screen. Alrighty, so I found this pre-made tier maker thing for Final Fantasy, but I did replace the rankings. Before I get into the rankings themselves, I should share that I have never played a Final Fantasy game that I did not enjoy. Therefore, I don't actually have any rankings on here that are bad, because I am relatively easy to please in the sense that if I'm generally entertained and I'm having a good time, then I don't tend to consider something like bad, and I've never had like a bad time with a Final Fantasy game. So my very top tier that I have here, I have labeled as part of my soul, and what I mean by that is that any of the games that I put into that particular section are Final Fantasy games that I essentially feel have developed me into the person that I am today in a very deep and formative way. Below that we have beloved, so I still very, very, very much love any of the ones that are going to be going into that category, but it's not quite as, like, deeply woven into my soul. The third tier is a good time where I generally had fun playing it, but, like, it wasn't like, wow! So my least favorite technically will be going into a good time, but with the context and caveat essentially that I really have enjoyed every Final Fantasy game that I've played. And then the bottom two are special, so I did want to cover my overall thoughts on all of the Final Fantasy games, but I haven't played every single game, and even then, there are some that I've started but haven't finished yet for a variety of different reasons, and I don't really feel like it would be fair to rank the ones that I haven't completed against ones that I have completed, so they're gonna have their own subcategory, and within the can't rank, haven't finished, I will compare them a little bit to each other. So there's that. Without further ado, we're just gonna go in the order that these icons are pre-populated in here, which means this is going to be a little bit chaotic, and I think this is more than just games. So we will explore and have a good time. The first one in here is Final Fantasy 13-2, and this is one that is going to have to go into can't rank, haven't finished. I did actually start Final Fantasy 13-2. It was in a weird era where I was trying to use an Xbox more, so I think I have it for Xbox, and I started it and I didn't get very far, and then my Xbox broke, and so I just never finished it. Not for any faults of the game in particular, just that's how things went with my life at the time, and so that is how it is. The next one in here that we have is Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. This is not a game. This is the Final Fantasy VII Advent Children movie. And what I'm thinking is, it belongs in Beloved. Do I think it's like really spectacular in quality? Not exactly. I do think that it's good, and I really like it, but it doesn't stand out to me as being like super amazing, but at the same time, it has been media for me that I would like watch over and over again when I was younger, just like watch it every night before I went to bed for a little bit of time and things like that. The next thing is Before Crisis Final Fantasy VII. I have not played that. To my knowledge, I don't know if it ever even released globally. I think this is the one that at least at first was only released on mobile phones like in Japan. So I know essentially nothing about it. I think there are like 3 things about it that I know about Rufus Shinra's backstory, just because I think he's interesting, but that's it. Brotherhood Final Fantasy 15 is next, and this one was the animated. It was like 4 episodes of an anime, and it was fine. It's going in a good time. I watched it, and I had a good time watching it, but it's not like I didn't get particularly obsessed with it, but I had a good time. Dirge of Cerberus, I started, but I never finished. Between Dirge of Cerberus and Final Fantasy 13-2, though, I am going to put Dirge of Cerberus higher, even though the gameplay was really rough for me, because I love Yuffie, which should not be surprising given that my cat is named Yuffie, and getting more Yuffie content, everything. My previous cat was named Vincent. This game is about Vincent in Final Fantasy VII, so I'm sure you can see why Dirge of Cerberus was very appealing to me. The reason I didn't finish it is because it was too hard. I couldn't win fights once I got like further into the game, because it has like aiming, and I can't aim. So story-wise and character-wise and everything like that, I do rank it higher in this subcategory over 13-2. The next is Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm blanking a little bit on what that is. I think it might be the newer, like, free-to-play thing. I'm gonna look it up real quick so that I don't lie on accident. Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis is a free-to-play episodic RPG for mobile and PC that retells the stories of Final Fantasy VII and its compilation titles. So Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, then, I do have, but I haven't ever played it. It is free to play. However, I am now wondering if before Crisis type stuff is in Ever Crisis. Maybe I should play it. The next two on the list, I'm going to reverse their order, are Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X-2. So here's where we get into things that make me all wiggly happy. Final Fantasy X, unsurprisingly, I think a lot of people put it here, is in the very top tier for me, part of my soul. It was one of my first Final Fantasy games. I think it was the first Final Fantasy game I ever saw, because I think I remember distinctly going into like a GameStop store. I was just there with my family, but my oldest sister was purchasing this game, Final Fantasy X, for the PlayStation 2. And that is the first memory I have of Final Fantasy ever being mentioned in my life at all. So Final Fantasy X has a special place in that way, and I did play the whole thing when I was younger. I've played it again multiple times. I streamed a whole playthrough of it as well, so if you're interested in seeing that, you can find all of the VODs from my Final Fantasy X streams on my second channel, Christina _T. And Final Fantasy X is honestly just such a beautiful game. The leap from 9 to 10 and what they were able to do with the PlayStation 2 over the PlayStation 1 was amazing. The voice acting isn't like the most quality voice acting in the world, but there's something about it that's just so endearing to me. The music is great, the battle system's great, the characters are great, the story is great. It emotionally wrecks me every single time I play it. I just really genuinely love Final Fantasy X. Following that is Final Fantasy X-2. I'm a little conflicted about Final Fantasy X-2 because I don't like it as much as a game, but there are some things in Final Fantasy X-2 that I find very satisfying. I really like the dress spheres. I really liked leveling them up. It scratched my brain in just the right way. So I really enjoyed that aspect. I liked seeing more of Yuna and Riku, and I liked Pain and a lot of the other new characters. I really like Gipple. He's definitely my favorite new character introduced in X-2. There are some parts of X-2 that I found a bit more tedious. It frustrated me how hard it was to get like the perfect ending, and how it kind of felt like it was impossible to do if you didn't like use some kind of walkthrough. But overall, I really enjoyed it and it stuck with me, and I do get the itch to play it again. So I think that the most reasonable place to put Final Fantasy X-2 is going to be in the beloved category. Next we have what I think is Final Fantasy 11, and I have never played any of Final Fantasy 11. It was the first Final Fantasy MMO. I was in my World of Warcraft era when it came out, so I couldn't really be playing two MMOs. So I never played even a moment of Final Fantasy 11, and therefore have nothing that I can say about it. The next is Final Fantasy 12, and Final Fantasy 12 is interesting because it really frustrated me when I was younger. On my first playthrough of Final Fantasy 12, I really was not particularly into it because it took a lot of what I expected from a Final Fantasy game and didn't deliver on those expectations. And I think that's an experience that a lot of Final Fantasy fans have at some point, with a variety of different games. Some people definitely had that kind of experience with 16. Some people had that experience with 15. Some people probably had that experience with parts of 13. For me, the first time it happened was with Final Fantasy 12. There wasn't really a romance subplot, which I really wanted at the time, and it didn't give me that. I didn't know anything about the sort of Ivalice side of Final Fantasy type games, and so it confused me that there were Moogles, but the Moogles weren't the Moogles I was used to. The combat system was a huge difference from previous combat systems. This was the first one that we had, other than 11, which was an MMO, that wasn't just like a pretty standard turn-based system. And so there was a really big learning curve there. And then a lot of the plot for it was really political, and I was quite young when I was playing this and it came out. So I wasn't really able to sort of follow and engage in a lot of the story in that way. But I replayed it more recently when they came out with the like remastered version that was the Zodiac age or Zodiac era. And I actually really, really enjoyed it when I played that remastered version. So if I were to rank these when I was younger, this would have ended up in a good time. But because of the Zodiac age era replay that I did more recently, I am going to put this into Beloved. Next, we have Final Fantasy 13. And Final Fantasy 13 did not scratch the itch for me. I think a replay of Final Fantasy 13 could probably help me appreciate it a bit more. But when I did play 13, I felt really constricted in terms of exploration and agency in the game until eventually we got to the point where it was just a ton of exploration. I also had a little bit of trouble, I think, following some parts of the plot. I was also still quite young when this one came out as well. And it just ended up kind of not really delivering on what I felt like I was looking for at the time. I still had a really good time playing it, and I liked the characters. They just didn't really stick with me ever in the same way that a lot of other Final Fantasy characters and Final Fantasy storylines have. I do concede, however, that if I were to have ever finished the whole Final Fantasy 13 trilogy, my opinion might be different, since obviously there are definitely character arcs that I just never saw fully because I didn't even finish Final Fantasy 13 too. So I do recognize that that's probably coloring some of my overall assessment. I do want to give the disclaimer that I don't have a problem with things being more linear. I think there's no issue in a story-based game giving you a sort of linear path that you're following to get through the story. I'm not someone who's like super obsessed with like things need to be open world, but I do like in Final Fantasy games having a sort of overworld map kind of situation where you have a clear linear story that you're following, but there's still like that overworld that you can explore and go to and from different places and things like that. That always was really pleasing to me as I was playing Final Fantasy games, and 13 really lacked that in a lot of ways, for me personally, at least. The next thing on the list is Final Fantasy 15. Final Fantasy 15 has gotten a lot of hate. I have plenty of critiques for Final Fantasy 15, but I really appreciated what Final Fantasy 15 tried to do, and I also know a lot of information about a lot of the mess that was sort of going on behind the scenes with Final Fantasy 15. I think about Final Fantasy 15 all the time. I think so much about what happened with chapter 13. If you know, you know. If you want me to make a video talking about my thoughts about chapter 13 of Final Fantasy 15, tell me, and I will gladly do so, because I could yap about that for ages. But I actually really enjoyed Final Fantasy 15. I would say it is not part of my soul. However, I would rank it so far my highest in the Beloved category. I really enjoyed it. I really liked the characters. I really liked the whole like bro road trip. I thought that it was a kind of refreshing, like new kind of thing. I really liked Noctis. I had really liked Noctis for like over a decade because I thought Noctis was cool back in the Final Fantasy Versus 13 era, and I was invested in this guy I knew nothing about for so much of my brain developing years of my life. So he was just very important. Like I said, I have a lot of critiques about the game. I would have to make a whole separate video to talk about all of my thoughts about Final Fantasy 15 because I just have so many thoughts. But I really loved it. I still love it today, and it is a very important Final Fantasy game to me, despite general controversy around, a lot of people's opinions on the game as a whole. The next one we've got is the OG #1 Final Fantasy. The original Final Fantasy, first there ever was. I, admittedly, have not finished the original Final Fantasy game, which means it has to go in this can't rank, haven't finished category. However, I'm putting it above 13 too, because I did get significantly farther in it. But the thing about the original Final Fantasy is that it doesn't have, like, most of the iconic Final Fantasy things, Moogles, Chocobos, those kinds of things. They all came in very slowly over time and started becoming like a staple in the series more progressively. And Final Fantasy, the original game, the characters feel a lot more generic to me in some ways. And obviously, in terms of like quality of life and gameplay, is like the lowest tier because it was the first one. It was the last ditch effort to make a fun, successful game, which is why it was called Final Fantasy, because it was going to be the final one, but then it did well. And here we are with a lot of Final Fantasies. So I generally mostly enjoyed what I played of it, but it didn't like really grip me, and so I didn't finish it. I've also had a harder time finishing a lot of the older ones that didn't get as much of a remaster. There are more now, but when I was going through my phase of like playing a lot of the older ones, a few of them were harder for me to play through because they were just like that really, really older quality, and so I struggled a little bit more with those. The next is Final Fantasy II, and it has suffered from a very similar problem to the original Final Fantasy. Going into the same category, I did start it, but I never finished it for essentially the same reasons, but I am going to put it higher than the original Final Fantasy within this subcategory because the characters in Final Fantasy II stood out to me a lot more, and I really liked them and thought that they were neat and wanted to know more about them. And I'll probably play the whole game at some point eventually. Next we have Final Fantasy III, and this one I did finish. I'm gonna put it in a good time, below Final Fantasy XIII, even though when I look back on them in my mind, something says that I enjoyed Final Fantasy III more than I enjoyed 13, but when I think about my experience as I was playing them, I think I was more gripped by 13 than I was 3. And I'm gonna go with how I felt at the time rather than how I feel right now because I feel like I can't back up an argument that I should put 3 higher than 13, so maybe they're just tied. I had a good time. The final dungeon of Final Fantasy III was so hard. Like, obscenely hard. It took me a very long time. Everything up to that point was fine, but then that final dungeon, it was really, really rough. Next on the list, we have Final Fantasy IV. And Final Fantasy IV is very, very, very important to me, and it goes in part of my soul, which may come as a surprise. I don't talk about 4 quite as often, but I played 4 because it got I think it was a DS or a 3DS port that made the little models, it wasn't just like the SNES pixels, like it upscaled things a lot more, and I played that game and I was so happy with it. In 1, 2, and 3, there was the classic like Final Fantasy job system where all of your characters could do any of the different jobs. So White Mage was a job, and any character could do the job of White Mage, and you could switch between them. And there was some variation between those games, but that was primarily how things worked. Final Fantasy IV was the first game in the series where specific characters had as a part of their character whatever their job was. So Rydia, as an example, is a summoner, and that is her whole like character class, her whole like battle job is that she is a summoner. And this was the first game that did that, and I really liked it, and I've thought about that a bit more, and I think it's probably because my favorite, which I'll get to eventually, is 9, and that is how Final Fantasy 9 works as well. And I think there's just something that I really liked about the character's class and abilities and things like that being so inherently tied into their character. So gameplay wise, I was really thriving. And then I also just really love the stories and characters in Final Fantasy 4. I don't talk about it as much as the rest of the ones that go into the part of my soul category, but I still think about Final Fantasy 4 like all the time. I love that game. Next on the list is Final Fantasy V. This one I also have not finished, but I am going to put it at the top of this category because I started it and I was really enjoying it. My sister finished it, I think. Even if she didn't finish it, she really, really liked it, and I enjoyed what I played of it, so I think were I to finish it, it would be, you know, relatively high ranking, just based on what I experienced so far. The next one is Final Fantasy VI, and I regret to admit that I have not finished Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI, the reason that I haven't finished it is because my initial experience with Final Fantasy VI was me and my sister sort of reigniting the thing that we do where we would play the game together. She would be playing it, I'd be like the information person on the side, and we would read the lines and do like the voice acting. So we got a fair ways into Final Fantasy VI, and it's absolutely brilliant, like as far in as I've gotten, but we never finished it, and I haven't been able to get myself to like pick it up and play it on my own because I really do still want to have that experience with my sister because that's one of the things I love about it so much. But she went to college and then I went to college, and then it's just been a lot harder for us to try and do that kind of thing. I still have not finished Final Fantasy VI, but I know if I do, it would definitely end up very high in my rankings, just based on what I've experienced from it so far. And then next, we have Final Fantasy VII. Unsurprisingly to everyone here, ooh, Final Fantasy VII definitely goes in this top category. I'm a little stumped on if I would rank it above Final Fantasy X or not. Okay. My decision is very slightly below Final Fantasy X, but it's super slight. It's almost a tie because there's something about Final Fantasy X, I can't even explain it. It is honestly almost a tie, and I don't have the words to explain why. It's just a feeling in my soul, which makes sense because I did say that this category is part of my soul. Next on the list, this one's embarrassing, is Final Fantasy VIII. And Final Fantasy VIII is embarrassing because I have never played it. I have watched one of my sisters, not the one I played things with and voiced stuff, but my oldest sister. I have watched her play some of Final Fantasy VIII, and what always deterred me from it is that when I would watch her play, the battle system seemed so annoying. I recall something like you didn't just like learn spells like the fire spell as an example, like you had to like find it as an item and it was like consumable, so you had to use it in that way. And my sister had a problem when she was playing, at least she was quite young at the time as well, where she struggled to beat most fights without like summoning something, like using the summon system within the game. And I just thought it sounded like such a pain. And so I never ended up wanting to play it, even though I know that it has like Final Fantasy's best love story is what a lot of people have said and what my sister said, and she really loved it a lot. So I'm probably going to play it eventually. I was just really put off by what I saw of the battle system, and teeny tiny baby Christina was also very confused about like, I think it jumps through like a current time and then like past stuff, and baby Tina was confused, but I would be able to handle that just fine now. I'm much older and have learned how to understand media. Next on the list is Final Fantasy IX, and I don't even need to think for a moment about where that goes. It goes in part of my soul, it goes in the first spot of part of my soul. There is no piece of media that exists that is comparable to the effect that Final Fantasy IX had on me as a person. My relationship with my sister also truly just developed like through this game, and we still have a really good relationship to this day, so I'm really glad that we ended up playing this together. Everything about Final Fantasy IX is so good. The vibes, the characters, the story, the style, the music. Literally, whenever I think about Final Fantasy IX, the only complaints that I had were you didn't get healed at save points, and you don't get experience from boss battles. That's it. Those are my only complaints about the whole game. So if that's the only things that I didn't love about it, I'm sure it's easy to see then like why it gets this top spot. I could yap about Final Fantasy IX for so long. I literally did my master's degree capstone project on Final Fantasy IX. I don't regret it at all. It was a great time. There's just absolutely nothing that can top that for me. If anything ever does, I will be shocked. So shocked. Next on the list, we have Final Fantasy XIV. And I am happy to say I did start Final Fantasy XIV, and I would love to keep playing Final Fantasy XIV. But the problem with Final Fantasy XIV, which is an MMO, is that it costs money monthly for me because I started playing before they had the free up to whatever, and that means that I can't downgrade to the free version essentially to do like those first chunks of the game because I already had a paid account. At least the last time I checked, you couldn't downgrade it, so I haven't gotten very far in it because I just have not been in a financial place to be able to cover that cost. But I've heard it's really good. The parts of it that I played, I really liked. So I do hope that one day I will be able to really play through that and experience the story. Next we have Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, and this one I did play in full, and it is very important to me, but it is not in the part of my soul category. It is beloved, but it's at the top of beloved so far. I remember so distinctly, I played this on my PSP. We would be like on our holiday vacations to my grandma's house, and all I would want to do is just sit there and play this game on my PSP, and it was so exciting because it was on the PSP, and that meant that when I like got it for a holiday, I didn't have to just leave it while we then went to go visit family. I got to take it with me, and that was my first like big Final Fantasy to go experience. And I loved it so much, I tried to complete like every bit of it that I could. I really enjoyed playing it. I thought the story stuff was super interesting. And I'm really glad that I did because it has definitely impacted my experience positively with Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. Speaking of which, they are next. So I'm going to do Final Fantasy VII Remake first, and Final Fantasy VII Remake I'm going to put into the beloved category above Crisis Core. I adored this game I had such a good time. I did stream this game. The VODs, as of me making this video, are not available on my second YouTube right now because I had some problems with them and a couple of them got ruined. But I really, really enjoyed it. I obviously have some critiques on it. I really felt like a lot of it brought back the magic of what I was feeling from Final Fantasy VII, but doing it in a sort of new way. And I really liked it a lot. Now, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is complicated because I haven't finished it yet. So I should be putting it in can't rank, haven't finished. But I'm gonna be so for real with you guys. Even though I'm only like 50% of the way through the game, and am currently streaming it, I can tell that this game is going to end up in the part of my soul category, most likely between Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy IV. I am enjoying it so much, and I'm really happy that they've been able to do Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in a way that is giving me a new version of what Final Fantasy VII gave me as a sort of like feeling in my soul, essentially. And that's why I really do strongly feel like when I do have it finished, it would go up into that very top tier here. Next is Final Fantasy XVI, and Final Fantasy XVI I again have not finished, but I did start it on stream, and I will be going back to it after I finish streaming Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and there are VODs for that on my second channel as well. Because I haven't finished it, I am struggling a little to rank it. Within the category of the games I haven't finished yet, I am going to put it in between 6 and 14, specifically because I think that 6 is going to get to me more, and I think that 16 is going to get to me more than 14, but these three, I'm honestly not sure, if I'm being totally for real. I've been really enjoying 16 so far. The battle system is not really my thing, but streaming it is nice because my community sure does enjoy when I am bad. So it makes for good content, even though I'm bad. The next couple of things are a little different. So A King's Tale Final Fantasy 15, I don't remember exactly what it is, but I didn't play it if it was a game, and I didn't watch it if it was a thing to watch. So I did not engage with that at all. Kingsglaive Final Fantasy 15, I will rank higher than Brotherhood, but it was just a good time. I enjoyed watching it, but it was just kind of there. Not bad. I wish it had been part of the game rather than its own like separate movie, but I understand that they were trying to do something interesting with all of these different parts all collected together for Final Fantasy 15. I just wish it had been in the game, essentially. Final Fantasy V Legend of the Crystals, I am gonna be honest, I don't know what that is. Therefore, it's going in can't rank, haven't played. And then next we have Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13. This one, I also have not played, which I mentioned earlier because I never finished 13-2, so obviously I couldn't do Lightning Returns, which is the third part of the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy. So I'm gonna put it right here. I've kind of ranked in this bottom category here, like the order that I feel like I'd be most likely to play them. I want to play 8 at some point for sure. Ever Crisis sounds like a good idea. And then after that, Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13. Because I would really like to be able to play all of the 13 games at some point. And like re-experience that with my new media literacy that I have as a well-educated adult. So I would really like to. All of the things below that, I don't really... Next we have what I think might be like the prequel or sequel game to Final Fantasy XII, but the picture's really small and I don't really recognize the logo, so I can't say for sure, but I can say for sure that I haven't played it. So it's going in the haven't played category. There are only 2 left. So next is Stranger of Paradise, which is on my wish list on Steam and PlayStation, but I have not played it. I do want to play it at some point, even though I know I'll be bad at it, because it's really not my style of gameplay, but I want to play it, you know? And then last on here is Final Fantasy IV The After Years, and this one is going into can't rank, haven't finished. I did start it, but I did not get very far at all. I have no idea where I would want to rank it in this category, so I'm putting it all the way at the end just because I don't know, because I really didn't get far into it, but I love Final Fantasy IV so much that I was like, yeah, I'll play it, but then I just kind of didn't. And there it is. That is my entire ranking. Things that have not been included in here are Final Fantasy Tactics, which I'm actually really excited about the like remastered edition. Other things like Crystal Chronicles, World of Final Fantasy, things like that aren't on here, because if you go beyond the numbered titles and their direct spin-offs and sequels, there's just so many more things, and it probably would have taken me like 10 hours, and a lot of them I don't think I've played. Some of them I have. Like World of Final Fantasy I actually really, really, really liked. As a general reminder about this, I don't think any of these are bad. I am not trying to start any arguments about what is or isn't the best Final Fantasy game, but more so to just share with you guys my personal perception and favorites and experience with each of these games, and in some cases movies and shows as well made it in here. So hopefully you found it at least somewhat enjoyable to hear me yap about the different Final Fantasy games and movies and shows that are related to the main numbered titles. I really enjoyed going through these and thinking about all of these games and talking about them. Honestly, it was kind of nice to look as well at all of the ones that I started and didn't finish, and all of the games that I haven't played yet. So if any of your favorite Final Fantasy games are in my can't rank, haven't finished category, or my can't rank, haven't played category, you could consider stopping by. You're welcome to stop by if you want to hang out, if you want to chat about Final Fantasy VII, about any Final Fantasy stuff. I love to talk with my chat during my streams, so feel free to do so. Additionally, I'm really curious about what you guys' favorite Final Fantasy games are. Do parts of my rankings match yours? Is there anything that we ranked like very, very differently? Are there any of the games I haven't finished or haven't played that is actually like your number one favorite and you want to give me like a pitch on why it should be the next Final Fantasy game that I play? I'm really interested in hearing all of that, so feel free to leave comments down below. I have a small enough channel that I will probably respond to every single comment that you guys leave that is Final Fantasy related, because it will not take all that much time to do so. If you're interested in my YouTube channel that has all of my Twitch VODs or any of my other social media or my Discord server, you can find those all linked in the description down below. Thanks for hanging out with me while we talked about Final Fantasy and which Final Fantasy games are my favorites. Let me know if you're interested in hearing me talk about Final Fantasy stuff more. If you like when I yap about Final Fantasy, I can do it more with relative ease. And I will see you guys either in my next stream or my next video. Bye!